Welcome to Talk World Radio, a half-hour discussion of politics as if the people mattered. I'm David Swanson. This week on Talk World Radio, we are talking about the flotilla to Gaza, and we are very, very privileged to have back our good friend Ann Wright, whose bio, I think, always says she spent 29 years in the Army and Army Reserves, I'm sorry to say, and 16 years in the State Department, I'm almost as sorry to say, but I think she should add over 20 years, by my reckoning, in the peace movement, which ought to be, front and center because she's doing a wonderful job of it. Ann Wright, welcome back to Talk World Radio.
Well, thank you, David. And I'm trying to make up for all the years I spent in the U.S. government with my little peace work here now for 22 years after resigning over the war on Iraq in 2003.
If you haven't made up for anything, I don't think anybody ever can. You've done a tremendous amount, and right now you're working on the flotilla to Gaza as we speak here on June 9th. What's the status?
Well, the status is that our little ship called the Madeline, a little tiny sailboat that had 12 people on it, has been taken by Israeli military forces. It was taken at 3 a.m. Mediterranean time, and the 12 people on the Madeline were taken off the vessel, off the Madeline, which is something that has only happened one other time with the 35 boats that we've sailed to break the Israeli naval blockade of Gaza. So it's a little bit different. They've been taken off our ship, put on an Israeli ship, and still here it's almost 12 hours later, they have not been taken into the Israeli port of Ashdod, which is the place where all the processing is done for all of us that have been on those flotilla boats. I've been on 2 boats that actually were taken by the Israelis and put in prison, but then I've been on 4 other boats, segments of the boats, but not that final part. So we have a long history of sailing these boats, and as I mentioned, it's only the second time that we've had participants have been taken off the boat and put on Israeli vessels. However, now we're finding out a little more about why they did that, why the Israelis decided to take them off the vessel rather than what they normally do, which is just demand that the captain or they put in their own captain to sail whatever boat it is onto Israel. But now we're finding out, Haaretz has already published that the government of Israel wants to make sure that the 12 participants we have see all the footage of October 7th, the horrific events of October 7th, no doubt, and we don't dispute that. But it's kind of the Israeli government is right in their face with this is why the genocide is going on. And of course, our guys and gals will say, well, no, that's not really all there is to it. There's 80-year history of what you've done to the Palestinians that you need to be watching the documentary of those 80 years. So I'm sure it may be a little contentious on that naval boat right now.
So they've kidnapped a dozen people and they're showing them videos with toothpicks propping their eyes open like Clockwork Orange. Make sure they see these videos. That's their treatment, their punishment.
Well, the punishment normally is that you are interrogated, and I'm sure they've been interrogated on that vessel. They'll be interrogated again once they get to Ashdod, and normally we go into a prison and stay there from anywhere from 3 to 10 days until the order for deportation is given. Although we did tell all of our participants that this is the first time that we've ever sailed vessels during a genocide. It's the first time we sailed them during the time where the Israelis are killing Palestinians. Usually we do it after there's an Israeli attack on Gaza, whether it was in 2008 and 9 Operation Cast Lead, whether it was in 2012, and then we sailed boats in 2013, whether it was the attack in 2014, and we sailed the boats in 2015. This is the first time that we've had volunteers who have been on a boat during an actual, and this one, the most horrific at all, a genocide. So we've told them that they need to be prepared for very, very harsh treatment, that They should be prepared for the treatment that Palestinians get, the over 10,000 Palestinians that are in Israeli prisons right now. So they were prepared for it. And the first step of it seems to be this psychological operation of showing them the videos, which I think most everybody has seen parts of all of these horrific things that happened on October 7th. But I think they will be pushing right back to the Israeli military, who've been ordered by their civilian leaders to show this stuff, pushing right back at the military saying, okay, we're watching this, but have you ever watched the documentaries about what you guys have done to the Palestinians?
And are doing right now. And they started out, I understand, by dropping some unidentified powder on the ship, presumably to scare people that it was some kind of poison. Is that right?
Well, we don't know. We don't know what the composition of the white stuff was, but you can certainly see on the deck of the ship. There's all this white powder, and a couple of the volunteers, Jasmine in particular, was saying this stuff is really burning my eyes, and
Mm.
the Israelis have not come back to mention what this substance may be. It was probably delivered by a drone, one of these small quad drones, quadcopters, which may be one of the types of aircraft that delivered the bombs that blew up our Conscience ship 1 week or 1 month before on May 1st in the waters off Malta.
So this was a ship that was preparing to sail toward Gaza that was attacked in the waters of Europe, essentially of Malta, and then you nonetheless quickly launched this other ship, right? And with a UK flag, how did you manage that? And with passengers from 7 different countries whose embassies we should be phoning, is that right?
That's absolutely right. Well, the UK flag came with the boat. When we purchased it, it had a UK flag, and why not fly the UK flag? At least that brings in another nation that should be very concerned if a vessel with its flag is attacked. We did not have a UK citizen on board of this particular mission, but still, it's a UK vessel. And as you mentioned, in Malta, we were within 8 hours of putting 40 people on that ship, the Conscience ship, when the Israeli military attacked the ship. We had some indications that there were nefarious things afoot, though, because the afternoon before, on a Sunday afternoon, on a national holiday of Malta, all of a sudden our agent, shipping agent or transfer agent, started calling us and say, "What's going on here? I'm getting all sorts of phone calls from members of the Maltese government about your ship, and they're saying that the certificate and the flag of the ship has been uh, denied, that it's been pulled by the country of Palau, which was the country that issued the certificate and the flag." And we said, well, we don't know. That's the first we've heard of it. So we called out to the Conscience and the captain and our flotilla steering committee person and said, what's happened? And they said, we don't know. All of a sudden, we got this voice message saying the flag has been taken. And I mean, so weird. And then here it is, 8 hours later, we get attacked. But as we're tracking all this stuff down, there was a lot of email exchange between the government of Malta, governments in the Mediterranean. And while we cannot confirm yet, I would certainly think that the United States government had been emailing the country of Palau, one of the countries that always votes with the United States in anything in the United Nations, because we pay them billions of dollars for the defense rights of that huge section of the Western Pacific, not only Palau, Micronesia, and the Federated States of Micronesia and Marshall Islands. So they do anything the U.S. wants to have done. And in this case, it was the state of Israel told the U.S., hey, how about take the flag off that ship? That'll help immobilize it. And then the United States does the bidding of its partner in crime, Israel. And so we were, as I mentioned, we had already had our last meeting with our delegates in Malta, sent them back to wherever they were staying, saying, get packed, get ready, get some sleep. Tomorrow morning at 6 in the morning, we'll start putting you out on the ship. And then we had to call them back at 8 in the evening to say the ship no longer has a flag, no certification. So, and we're trying to find out what happened. And then at a little after midnight, here there was the bombing and fire of our ship. So there's a lot of nefarious things afoot concerning the flotilla, as there always has been ever since 2008 when the first boats went to Gaza.
And the lawfare and the actual warfare tactics in close combination there. The attacks I think we should discuss are clearly illegal, right? When I read in the Guardian that Israel has taken control of the ship as if it were out of control and needed help. This is actually an act of piracy. This is actually a crime, right? I mean, they could be writing Middle Eastern terrorists attack Swedish woman if they wanted to make the headline in that manner, right? There's nothing legal about what Israel has done.
Not at all. I mean, this is not the first time that they've attacked our ships in international waters, knowing full well it's international waters. This was a ship that was 120 nautical miles from the nearest point in Gaza and more than 40 nautical miles off the Egyptian coast. It wasn't even in Israeli waters, but that doesn't matter. To them, they've actually gone out over 100 nautical miles to stop some of our ships. So they have no problem, as the United States has no problem in stopping any ship anywhere in the world that it wants to, and always using the idea of, well, drugs or weapons or whatever. So the Israelis are following in the tracks of the United States in many ways, but then the United States follows Israel as it tests weapons on the Palestinians and provides the data of how good they kill to the United States government for its aircraft, for its bombs, the huge bombs, 2,000-pound bombs that the U.S. is giving to Israel to just obliterate the little place called Gaza.
This ship not only had people from several countries whose embassies we should be phoning, but some prominent people, which may be why it's gotten what media coverage it has, even though Greta Thunberg gets a lot more media coverage when it's about climate than when it's about genocide, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think?
Well, and we were very shocked, really, when Greta expressed interest to our Swedish campaign that she would be interested in finding out more about the flotilla. She actually traveled up to the home of the leader of our Spanish campaign to talk to her about it. And she's only 22 years old. She is a young person, and she's been doing Palestine solidarity work over the last couple of years, since the genocide for sure, as well as her climate work. And so when we heard from our Swedish campaign that, guess what, Greta Thunberg might be interested in joining this, we were, of course, the notoriety that she brings with it is important. But the other consideration that we all had was, she's very young, and generally we do not take people younger than 25 on this boat. And we're very concerned about the psychological impact, all of these things on everyone, and particularly a young person. Well, Greta decided she would come down and at least meet the people that were a part of the flotilla. And so she and three of her friends took the train and ferry boats because she doesn't fly. So they had an arduous 48-hour trip with all sorts of complications with connections and all that, but finally arrived in Malta. And it was interesting to us because here we have these four young people uh,
This was
who
Malta or Sicily?
this was in Malta. They came first to Malta
Ah,
and sat through all the training, did all the training with us. And at first they were very standoffish. And yeah, you could understand that why, because most of the people were older, although we did have some kind of middle-aged people too. But as the days went on, they warmed up. And then when we had the crisis of the bombing, they were outraged like we were. And then they helped take some of the materials that we had brought down from Sicily from one boat we had there, slept them all the way over to Malta on the ferry boat and all. And so Greta and her buddy said, well, we'll help take them back to Sicily. And with all of this, they were getting to know people on the flotilla. And then when we finally decided less than a week and a half later that we were going to try to move a sailboat that had been kept kind of out of public view, that had been brought from Croatia. And on the way to Sicily, it had a fire in the engine room. So we had to have that boat repaired and then brought it on to Sicily. And then it could only take 12 people. So the Swedish campaign reached out to Greta to say, okay, we can only have one person from Sweden on board, and would you want to be considered for it? And she mulled it over and came to Sicily, again with a couple of other friends, and facing that for sure this thing's going to go. And the reality of it all, she finally said, yes, I want to do this. And I'm sure her parents, our Swedish campaign, were in touch with her parents who, were not overly thrilled with this. I'll just say that. Nor were her friends that had come down with her. But anyway, all that to say, Greta is a special young woman, and this should not be called the Greta Thunberg mission. She is one of 12 people, no greater value, no lesser value, but she did get the publicity, as did our French member of parliament, Rima Hassan, who is a lovely, lovely person, and who, as a member of the European Parliament, she was on that boat. And she's now gotten quite a few European members of or members of the European Parliament to sign statements saying this is an outrage of the taking of the vessel, as was the bombing of the Conscience.
is there yet another boat getting ready to go? Only answer this if you want to, but is there yet another boat coming?
There is another boat, and it is one that has been in Sicily for over a year. It's very public that it's been there. We've been fixing its engine, and it's just about ready to go. And I would say by the end of the month or the very first week of July, we're going to have another vessel. There'll be the third wave, so to speak, with the Conscience the first, the Madeline the second, and now the Hondola the third. And there may be more, because all of this has really gotten a lot of people interested in the flotilla. And some organizations are coming forward to say that they would like to procure boats that could be a part of a flotilla. So I think we're going to have quite a season of challenging the Israeli naval blockade of Gaza on behalf of the people of Palestine.
I think more and more boats going would be wonderful. We've got our friends around the world also fasting and demonstrating and sitting in. We've got people signing up to go to Egypt for a march to Gaza. What impact are you seeing in governments and in the UN? I'm seeing a lot of pretense at the United Nations, where it seems to me the nations of the world could get around the United States if they wanted to. What do you see?
Well, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to see the UN Security Council with 14 members voting for a ceasefire, and then another U.S. administration, this time the Trump administration, following in the tracks of the Biden administration, vetoing this ceasefire, and hearing the pleas of all of the representatives there that this ceasefire should go on. Well, they need to do more than plead. They need to actively boycott, sanction, isolate the state of Israel, and really put some pressure on them to stop this genocide that's going on. And as you mentioned, the citizens of the world are taking the lead, and the global march to Gaza, which is meeting in Cairo on June 10th and let's say 12th, and then the Samud convoy that is already gathered in Tunis, and it will be trying to drive across Libya. Good luck on that. But they say they've smoothed the way or greased the palms or whatever it's going to take to at least get to the Egyptian border. And now, of course, the challenge is you try to get all these people into Egypt to be able to drive across the Sinai to Rafah. We've been through this drill before. In 2009, Medea Benjamin, myself, Tyke Berry coordinated or established what was called the Gaza Freedom March. And we brought 1,350 people from 55 countries in December of 2009, which was the 1-year anniversary commemoration of the start of the horrific 27-day attack by Israel on Gaza. So we had all these people in Cairo, and I had been there over a month before working with the Foreign Ministry of Egypt, and they never said yes, but they never said no. So we had all these people coming in, and it wasn't until we got notified by some of the bus companies that we had made contracts with to move, hundreds of people across the Sinai, that the government of Egypt was saying, no, you can't leave. So that in 2009, 2 years really before the Arab Spring, we like to think that perhaps some of the things that the activists from all over the world did in Cairo, things that activists in Cairo could not do because they would get arrested. At the time under Mubarak, no more than 6 people could gather anywhere on the streets of Cairo. They could not use Tahrir Square. They couldn't do anything. Well, here came all of these activists from all over the world who aren't used to doing anything their government says. And they were willing to stand up to the Egyptian government. We met every single night on Tahrir Square. We had demonstrations at the Israeli embassy, the U.S. embassy, at the United Nations, at many of the departments of the government of Egypt. Fortunately, no one got arrested, but a couple of people got kind of pushed around, beaten up just a little bit. But it was quite remarkable. And for this global convoy to be organized, and people are already starting to move in to go into Cairo. It's wonderful. It's created a real buzz around the world. The only caution, and I've mentioned this to the organizers of the global march, who many of them came to Sicily to be at the launch of the Madeleine. I mentioned to them that we've had a little dust up with the government of Egypt on some other things. And in 2014, we had 100 international women that were coming in to go across the Sinai to go into Gaza for the International Women's Day. And I was one of 20 that arrived a couple of days earlier, and we're in our hotel when the other 80 arrived, and the Egyptian government would not let any of them out of the airport. And so they created quite a dust up in the airport, singing, blocking stuff, all of this stuff, until they were put on planes to leave. We were accosted at our hotel by the Egyptian police, who said, "You have to leave right today." And we said, "No, you've already let us in. We're not leaving." "Well, you've got to get out of town at least." And one cop said, "You got to get out of town because I'm going to lose my job if you all stay here. So would you please go to Luxor, Alexandria, someplace?" So I'm hoping that these people actually get into Cairo, because it would be very easy for the Egyptians just not to let people essentially off the plane. So keep your fingers crossed, but it's created a real stir and people are enthusiastic about it. And I wish I could go, but I've already tried to get into Egypt last year, and somehow their records are pretty good and they go back to at least 2014, and I was denied entry into Egypt.
Well, I think every effort over these years helps in the upcoming efforts and inspires people around the world and in Egypt to take action. We've got just a few minutes left, Ann Wright. A lot of people are getting encouraged and getting involved, but a lot of people are also getting scared. People's names are on lists. People can't travel. People are getting deported. They're sending the troops into Los Angeles. There's going to be a fascist weapons parade down the streets of Washington, D.C. Things don't look good. What should people do who aren't too scared to get involved a little bit? And in particular, how can people help the flotilla?
Well, it is a time that none of us ever predicted would really come about. And in a period of 5 months from January till now, that's unbelievable that the planning over the last 4 years and this project 2025, which really spelled out what they were going to do if they got into office. But the people I think that are the most disastrously affected, of course, they didn't read that. It is a scary time, and people are getting they're getting hurt psychologically, physically, but we can't give up. I mean, this is a time that it really is important for us to have a backbone, to have a conscience, to have be willing to stand up and face down what is in front of us. And that's the only way we're ever going to get them to stop this crap, is to really keep standing up and help people as they get knocked down. Then we stand up to help them up and keep going. So the big parade that's happening this coming Saturday, there should be lots of people out to say, no, we don't want that. And I am quite sure the U.S. military does not want to be doing this parade. But they've been ordered to do it, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any rabble-rousing within the military itself. It could be that some of the vehicles just break down and just can't even get out of the parking lot of the Pentagon to come. I wouldn't put that at all out of the realm of possibility, because these young people that are in the military, they know they're living in barracks that need to be repaired. There's so many things that money should be spent on. It's not the military for sure, but their family members get Social Security. Their family members are on Medicaid. Their family, and particularly junior people in the military, they need the SNAP food aid, because the U.S. doesn't pay them enough to keep them out of poverty. So I wouldn't be at all surprised that there's a little bit of a rebellion that might be going on with that parade.
There's got to be a little more courage from all of us. Just acting normally in these times requires it now. We run up against this trend everywhere. So I do hope to see some of that, and I hope to have you back on, Ann Wright, and talk about all of the wonderful things you're working on in the future. Great job with the flotilla, and thank you for coming on Talk World Radio.
A pleasure, David, and keep up the good work too with World Radio and World Beyond War.
Thanks, Ann. This is Talk World Radio. I'm David Swanson. Take action at rootsaction.org. Help end war at worldbeyondwar.org. Read or listen to today's Peace Almanac entry at peacealmanac.org. All past shows can be heard at talkworldradio.org. Talk World Radio is produced in Charlottesville, Virginia, and syndicated by Pacifica Network. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way.